Welcome to The Explainer. Okay, we're going to dive right into this today because we are starting with a scene that feels straight out of a horror movie. Picture this. It's the year 1888. Archaeologists are digging in the sands of Egypt and they uncover this dark, terrifying tomb. Inside, they find a very eerie mummy. But you know what? The mummy itself isn't even the most shocking part of this discovery. Resting right alongside this preserved body is a massive 3,000-year-old papyrus scroll. It's a copy of the infamous Egyptian Book of the Dead. And what's written on the mummy itself sets a deeply suspenseful tone for the entire journey we're about to take. Think about this exact phrase for a second. "My heart, do not testify against me." This specific quote was carved onto a stone scarab that was placed deliberately right over the mummy's actual heart. I mean, wow. This isn't some peaceful prayer to the gods. It's a desperate, terrified plea from a dead man to himself, literally begging his own heart to keep its mouth shut. To figure out why a dead man was so terrified of his own organs, we really need to understand the incredibly complex and, frankly, dangerous journey the ancient Egyptians believed happened the very second you took your last breath.
And that brings us to Section 1, a terrifying discovery.
So this scroll we're talking about wasn't just a religious text. It was essentially a highly detailed survival guide for the afterlife. It is absolutely packed with nearly 200 magical spells for dealing with spirits, fending off ghosts, and navigating complete darkness. And to really grasp how important this guide was, we're talking about a scroll that is 78 feet long. A 78-foot-long, beautifully painted map. This wasn't some basic little pamphlet. This was the ultimate premium survival guide. Every single inch of it was designed to ensure that the person holding it wouldn't be completely erased from existence. So you might be wondering who exactly needed a 78-foot survival guide. Well, let's ground all this mythology in a very real, relatable human story. The mummy belonged to a man named Ani. Now, he wasn't a king, but he was a highly respected, wealthy government official living in the powerful city of Thebes around 1250 BC. He managed royal records, he oversaw the city's grain supply, and he had a wife named Tutu who sang in the local temple. They basically lived a very comfortable, elite life, right up until Ani's sudden death kicked off this entire supernatural journey. But here is a truly fascinating twist that modern scientists discovered when they finally examined his scroll. You'd probably think a guy this rich would have his massive scroll carefully, painstakingly written out over years, right? Actually, scratch that. The Papyrus of Ani is essentially a ready-made book. It was pre-written, likely just sitting in an ancient Egyptian shop, with blank spaces intentionally left throughout the text. When Ani died suddenly, his grieving family seemingly bought it in a total panic, hastily filling his name into the blanks. It's exactly like running out to buy a ready-made greeting card at the last minute and just scribbling your name at the bottom. This wasn't a calm, calculated preparation for death. It was a rushed, desperate attempt to save him. Which leads us to Section 2, preparing the body. Before Ani's soul could even begin to use that expensive scroll, his physical body had to be dealt with. The ancient Egyptians firmly believed that the afterlife wasn't just some vague spiritual realm. The soul absolutely needed a physical house to return to. If the body rotted away, the soul was destroyed forever. So let's walk through exactly how the priests ensured that wouldn't happen. It's a little gruesome, but highly effective. First, they made a cut in the stomach. Second, they meticulously removed the internal organs, lungs, stomach, liver, intestines, and placed them into 4 special jars. Third, and this is the really crucial part, they packed the entire hollowed-out body in a special white salt called natron for 40 long days. Think of it like treating dry wood. If you suck out all the moisture, it just won't rot. Finally, they washed the dried body and wrapped it in enough linen bandages to fill an entire room. But the most crucial detail here is what they left inside. The priests actually scooped out the brain and threw it away, thinking it was totally useless. But the heart? The heart was never removed. Why? Because according to their beliefs, a person's thoughts, their memories, every single lie they ever told and every sin they ever committed weren't stored in the brain at all. They were stored right there in the heart. The heart was the absolute anchor of the soul, and more importantly, it was the ultimate, inescapable witness that would testify at the very end of his journey. Section 3. Navigating the underworld. Okay, so Ani's physical body is safely salted and wrapped up in a dark tomb, but his soul wakes up somewhere else entirely, the Duat. He is standing at the entrance to the ultimate afterlife gauntlet, totally alone, armed with absolutely nothing but his 78-foot scroll. Just imagine this environment for a second. It is pitch black. You can barely see your own hands in front of your face. In the distance, massive lakes of literal fire are burning.
The path forward is blocked by giant locked gates, guarded by horrific hybrid monsters. We're talking guards with the heads of crocodiles and snakes. And lurking in the darkness is a massive serpent named Apep, just waiting to swallow defenseless souls whole. No pressure, right? So how on earth do you survive this? Well, you use your scroll. And this brilliantly illustrates the ancient Egyptian class system, even in death. Poorer people could really only afford a budget scroll with maybe 10 to 20 spells. But Ani's wealthy family? They bought the premium version with over 100 spells. Think of these spells like cheat codes or specific keys in a video game. If a crocodile monster blocked a gate, you had to speak the exact right spell and the exact right name from your scroll to bypass it. If you messed up the pronunciation, boom, you were instantly erased from existence. Ani's soul had to perfectly execute spell after spell just to survive the walk.
Moving on to Section 4, the ultimate trial. Surviving those monsters? Yeah, that was just the warm-up. At the end of the dark path, Ani finally steps into the Grand Hall of Ma'at, where he is forced to face exactly 42 terrifying judges. 42 ancient deities just staring him down in absolute silence. His task? He has to address every single one of them by their exact name, without stuttering. Then, he has to recite 42 negative confessions. He literally has to look them in the eye and say, I have never spoken a lie, I have never stolen grain, I have never made anyone cry, I have never taken an innocent life. Now let's be real for a second. Ani was a powerful, wealthy politician in charge of the city's money and food supply. The chances of him living a totally flawless life without a single lie or a single tear caused, it was virtually impossible.
Which brings us to arguably the most famous moment in all of Egyptian mythology, the weighing of the heart. See, the judges aren't just taking Ani's word for it. They take his actual heart, that ultimate record of every sin, and place it on a massive golden scale against the feather of truth. And the stakes here are completely binary. If his heart is light, free of sin, he passes into eternal paradise. But if his heart is heavy with the guilt of his lies, he doesn't just go to hell, he gets eaten by this terrifying thing. Meet Emmet, the devourer. As the scale balances, the jackal god Anubis is holding the weights, the scribe god Thoth has his pen ready to write the final verdict, and Emmet is sitting right next to the scale, just waiting. She has the head of a crocodile, the upper body of a lion, and the lower body of a hippo. The 3 most deadly animals in Egypt, all rolled into one nightmare. If that scale tips the wrong way, Emmet's jaws snap shut, and Ani is completely erased from the universe forever. But remember that chilling quote from the very beginning? My heart, do not testify against me. That wasn't just some lovely poetry. It was the ultimate cheat code. Ani's family knew he was a politician who had likely sinned. So that creepy stone scarab they placed on his chest during the mummification process was actually a deliberate, magical legal hack. It was a spell designed to literally mute his heart. When those 42 judges weighed his heart, the stone forced it to commit perjury. It completely hid a lifetime of mortal sins, effectively gagging his conscience so the scales would stay perfectly balanced. It was a rigged trial, guys, and Ani passed.
Section 5, an afterlife of labor.
So the heart is light, Ammit goes hungry, and the god Osiris gives the final nod of approval. Ani finally enters the field of reeds. Now, you might expect heaven to be, endless lounging on fluffy clouds, right? Not for the ancient Egyptians. What you actually see in his scroll is Ani farming. He's plowing fields, harvesting wheat, sweating in the sun. To the Egyptians, whose entire existence relied on agriculture, a perfect heaven was just a farm where the river never dried up and the crops never failed. But make no mistake, it still required endless, back-breaking manual labor. But come on, Ani was a wealthy politician. He certainly wasn't about to do manual labor for all of eternity. So, his family packed a very specific number of items in his tomb to get him out of it. 401. They buried him with exactly 401 small clay statues. 365 of them represented a worker for every single day of the year, and the extra 36, those were managers to oversee them. These statues are known as shabti, and the scroll had a highly specific spell number 6, that activated them. So whenever the gods called Ani's name to go plow the fields, a shabti doll would magically come to life, say, I am here, and just go do all the heavy lifting for him. It's brilliant. The elite class of Egypt essentially invented a workforce of automated afterlife robot servants so they could actually kick back and relax in heaven. And finally, Section 6, fading into history. Let's step back into the reality of the modern day for a moment and trace the physical journey of this very scroll.
Back in 1250 BC, it was sealed in the absolute pitch darkness of a tomb in Thebes, specifically designed to sit quietly for eternity. Then, fast forward to 1888 AD, a British scholar named Wallace Budge cracks open that dark tomb, finds the mummy, and takes the scroll. Today, if you visit the British Museum in London, you won't see a continuous 78-foot scroll. You will see it chopped up into fragmented pieces, trapped behind glass frames and slowly fading under harsh modern lights. And this brings us to a deeply, deeply poignant irony. We are looking at a 3,000-year-old papyrus that was specifically engineered to grant a man eternal life and prevent him from fading from existence. Yet today, it is slowly dying. The vibrant yellows and oranges are degrading. Museum conservators are now frantically pulling frames off display to try and save it. Just think about that. Modern scientists are now acting exactly like those ancient Egyptian priests, desperately trying to preserve a dying artifact that was originally meant to guarantee immortality. You know, empires fall, languages die, and gods are forgotten. But the underlying fear that drove Ani's family to buy the scroll, it's still entirely relatable. It is that universal human fear that our deepest, darkest truths are recorded somewhere inside us. So I'm going to leave you with this final provocative thought. If there were no magical stone scarabs to mute your conscience, if your heart was placed on the golden scale today, right now, would it be lighter than a feather? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time as we dive into another incredible piece of history.